This is actually the worst of both worlds, hear me out. The sandbox is fun because of the endless possibility, but if it's not properly managed, then the problem is you don't know what to do. The railroad shortcuts into fun because the path forward is clearly laid out. The problem could be that you don't ever feel in control. The DM literally takes all of the bad and none of the good. This DM is not playing with his friends, he's playing with himself and forcing his friends to watch. Oh, that sounded really bad. What I meant was... Oh, hello, didn't see you come in. This is one of those DMs who's the absolute worst on 4 opposite extremes. He's the worst at railroading and the open world. He plays favorites, but he's so bad at it, he punishes the favorite. Clickety-clack, this story is whack. But before we read that story, Kings of Kurth caught my eye because it has its own story worth telling. In typical kid fashion, an 8-year-old knocked the pieces off his dad's chessboard, replaced them with D&D minis, and started rolling dice. His dad's DM instincts kick in, and instead of shutting it down, he says, "Okay, teach me." That moment turned into a full father and son project. They 3D printed armies together, expanded the board to fit 4 players, and built 9 unique factions based on the lore from their home game. They partnered with professional modelers and printers and turned it into a real game that we can play. Mechanically, it's a mix of chess strategy, tactical dice combat, and asymmetric wargaming. Easy to learn, but complex under the surface. Cool game, up to 4 players. That's why this video is sponsored by the Kickstarter for Kings of Kurth. It's live now, so feel free to check it out in the link below. This story happened sometime in the early 2000s. I was the forever DM of my group and had long wanted to take on the role of the player. However, there was no one in my group who wanted to be a DM. At that time, I often talked to a work colleague about TTRPGs. She was constantly raving about her boyfriend, who was the best DM in the world. The stories he created were just so fascinating and enchanting, and his characters were so vivid, you could fall in love with any of them. It's just wonderful to play with him. In a previous campaign, her old character was the descendant of a white dragon, and at some point she began to transform into one. That sounded a little over the top for my taste, but she seemed to have fun, and the DM didn't seem to be the kind of guy who held back good rewards for his players. If his roleplay is great too, then consider me interested. Of course, that sounded great. I asked her if I could play in her group. She excitedly told me that he was planning a new campaign, and as soon as it was ready, I was welcome to join. The group consisted of the DM, his girlfriend, and my colleague Kiara. Her friend, let's call her Jailbird. The reasons for this name will become all too clear shortly. The campaign was set up so that all the characters start out as classless Andes in a remote village. The characters were all human, had no class, and were level 0. Unfortunately, no one had told me about this, so I rolled a dwarven fighter with a hammer and a shield. His name was Eignir. He was on a pilgrimage to the halls of his ancestors and had made a plan to do good deeds for his god on the way there. Normally, such things would be clarified in a Session 0, but this story takes place about 20 years ago, and as far as I know, Session 0s were not as widespread as they are today. When I turned up for my first session, it turned out that the group had already been through 1 or 2. I don't remember the reasons for this, but it was clear that a lot had happened by the time Eignir arrived in the village as a lone pilgrim. The game begins, and the world's best DM gave me absolutely nothing to do. There was no NPC to approach me, there were no suspicious events, the village was peaceful and unremarkable like any other, so Eignir set off to explore the village on his own. He asked the villagers about strange happenings in the area, asked about work for a warrior and leather worker like him, asked about sacred sites of his god in the region. But the farmers and craftsmen only uttered the standard RPG farmer talk that we've all heard 1,000 times before. "Oh, it hasn't rained for a long time. The harvest will be bad this year." Or, "The Merton's family cow gave birth yesterday. They are beside themselves with excitement." Interesting stuff like that. The village's small temple was not dedicated to Hark, but Eignir decided to take a look inside anyway. A good deed is a good deed. Hark will understand. But apart from the local priest wasting a pitiful attempt at conversation on Eignir, there was nothing to be gained here either. Town guard? No. Blacksmith? No. Are there thieves in town? No. Is the sky still blue? Yes. So he set off for the only place where an adventurer could still find adventure, the local tavern. Okay, hold up. Our narrator shows up with a dwarven pilgrim on a holy quest. The DM is literally playing character motivation on easy mode. You could go any direction with this. But this DM in particular just doesn't seem to know how to start a campaign, which is infuriating because that should be the easy part. Get the characters all in one room and then torch them with an inciting event that ignites the story. Not hard. Instead, we get the players literally trying to trigger any quest flag, and the DM just refuses to play. How does this look in real life? Does he just sit there in silence while the players throw attempts to quest trigger at him? The best DM in the world does not concern himself with starting the game. The players have to crawl through broken glass to get him to start the game. It asserts dominance. So our boy does what any desperate adventurer will do when the DM has bricked the world map. He goes to the tavern in hopes that the game will finally begin. Let's go. Now the DM has turned his attention to Jailbird. Jailbird started the session in the local town guard's jail. It was obvious that she had been locked up there in a previous session, though why was beyond me, and I didn't want to ask out of character. However, she was treated well by the guards, and she was also visited once during the session by a villager. I think an uncle, but I'm not sure, who told her that it hasn't rained for a long time. The harvest will be bad this year. Exciting stuff. Quick aside, I like that all of the NPCs are literally just like video game NPCs. They'll just all randomly overshare the exact same subjects. Exciting stuff. Anyway. Next up was Kiara, the DM's girlfriend. She had been plagued by terrifying nightmares for some time. Some of them seemed to be prophetic in nature. Kiara also suffered from severe headaches and partial memory loss, and she was sure that these two things were somehow connected. A mystery, certainly, but one that needed to be solved. She talked to her mother, or some kind of mother figure, I'm not sure, who told her that her dreams must be messages from the gods. Kiara was worried and didn't quite know what to do. She decided to visit her friend in prison. However, the meeting between two characters who both have no idea what's going on went exactly as you would imagine, so I won't go into detail about that conversation. In the tavern, Eignir sat on a window on the first floor of the building and sipped his third honey ale. At this point, it should be said that Eignir had not met either of the two other party members. The innkeeper had no interesting news or stories to tell, and the other patrons seemed to be simple peasants. Eignir saw no one suspicious and overheard no interesting conversations. Somehow I felt like I was wandering through a well-crafted, well-thought-out location that, despite all the attention to detail, wasn't tied to any adventure. A nice but empty backdrop, so to speak. After a while, Kiara came into the tavern. She and Eignir had never met before, so he just nodded to her and raised his drinking horn in greeting. The two introduced themselves and made small talk. At this point, I have to mention that about 4 hours have passed since the start of the session, and Eignir is just now in contact with another character for the first time. Kiara told him about her dreams and her memory loss. Eignir listened to her attentively and sympathetically, but didn't really know how he could help. I asked the DM for an Arcana check, which went horribly wrong. Eignir was not a cleric, and his religion was rather secondary to the character. Still, I asked the DM if similar dreams played a significant role in Hark's religion. They did not. The DM just refuses to bite on anything the characters could use. Like I said, this was Eignir's first adventure, so he had nothing on him besides his weapons, some tools, a water hose, and some coins. Powerless to help, Eignir decided to promise Kiara that he would include her in his prayers and look for a solution to her problem during his travels. He did not forget to tell Kiara that it hasn't rained for a long time and the harvest will be bad this year. Or so he's heard. Kiara appreciated that. I glanced at Kiara's player and we shared a shrug. Suddenly, one of the other guests at the far end of the room jumped up, looked at Eignir with wide eyes, and ran off. Eignir had absolutely zero reason to chase after a fleeing rando. However, I was really tired of waiting around and was craving a little action, so, against all reason, I decided to play Eignir as if he were a cat that would pounce on anything that ran from it. He jumped up and shouted, "In the name of the hammer, stay where you are." The runaway kept running away, and Eignir followed. The stranger ran through the door that led to the guardrobe. Context, a guardrobe in this case was a toilet, as they were often found on the outer walls of houses and castles in the Middle Ages. This is a tiny chamber that was attached to the outer wall like a small enclosed balcony. Feces were not, as they are today, pumped out through a pipe and running water, but they simply fell down through a hole in the floor. This was good news. The fleeing man was trapped. Eignir rattled the door. Locked. It was quite possible that the poor stranger simply had to go to the toilet very urgently. But after sitting around doing nothing for over 3 hours, I wanted to get as much action and excitement out of this situation as possible. Eignir threw himself against the door. The DM called for a strength check. Pass. The door flew off its hinges with loud crashes and splinters. The guardrobe was empty, but it had a window. Eignir climbed to the opening and saw the stranger just as he climbed down the facade and dropped the last few meters to the ground. Taking the stairs would take too long, so Eignir climbed after him. The DM calls for a dexterity check. Pass. Just barely, but passed. The DM laughed and informed me that if Eignir had failed the dexterity check, he would have ended up headfirst in the toilet. Hilarious. The DM demanded another dexterity check to see if Eignir would make it to the ground safely or get injured. This check also went well for him, and he landed with cat-like grace, but even though Eignir was hot on the stranger's heels and had passed all of his checks, the fugitive was long gone. At this point, the DM made a detour to the prison. Jailbird was still sitting behind bars. Wait, what? What? Okay. To those who don't know, it is important to remember that this is the best DM of all time, because it's very easy to forget that when you think about how this was the worst way to run this scene from start to finish. I will drill it down into just 3 points. 1. You make a random NPC just run away from him. Was there no other way? You could have made it a thief, or an assassin, or a belligerent. You're the DM. You can make it anything, something way more compelling than just some non-criminal guy running to the bathroom. 2, you make it so it really doesn't matter if he succeeds or fails his check. The outcome is exactly the same and it has no impact. He's gonna lose the guy anyways without a single clue. And then 3, you cut the scene with no resolution and move on to somebody else. It's so clumsy and janky. Expanding on my first point, OP was right to say that there's no reason to pursue this guy. Someone shows up, suddenly runs away, and you chase him to a bathroom with a locked door? That explains it. Chase is off. Nothing shady. He just suddenly had to take a number 2. It happens to everyone. But unfortunately, the DM is so bad that the dwarf is forced to assume that this is the main quest now. This DM is so bad even when he starts the campaign. He's incapable of starting the campaign. He gets the first encounter going and lops it off. A goldfish could run a better encounter than this. Total botch job from front to back. Also, OP already said it. I feel like it's worth repeating that this is 4 hours into the session. A little over 4 hours in. Meanwhile, Kiara, who's supposed to be the favored girlfriend that the DM is biased towards, is only really getting, like, prophetic nightmares, divine messages, memory loss. These aren't even really plot hooks. These are still, like, all of this could have been contained in a backstory. The only equivalent of this is like, imagine you're playing chess with someone, they're playing white, they're supposed to go first, and he keeps hovering his hand over a piece and then not moving it. He's edging the campaign. Anyways, I am sure the DM will finally start the game when we get to Jailbird. At this point, the DM had made a detour to the prison. Jailbird was sitting behind bars. However, a guard now came to her and informed her that she had served enough time and she can leave. The guard's words were, "You've been locked up long enough. You're free. Please excuse the inconvenience." Well, done with that storyline, Aignir went back to the tavern and asked Kiara if she knew the man, which she denied. We decided to report the incident to the city guard, but we spotted the stranger entering the temple. Aignir, Kiara, and the newly released Jailbird followed him. The stranger attacked immediately, summoning a hendar, a kind of winged worm with a horse's head, while Jailbird cowered in a corner, trembling with fear. Remember, we're all level 0 nobodies. Aignir fought the monster, supported by occasional blows with a broomstick from Kiara, and afterwards I researched the monster and found out the hendar had been terribly nerfed and was actually much too strong for a level 1 PC. Why didn't he take a lower level monster? I don't know. He's the best DM in the world, so who am I to judge? The stranger was so badly wounded in the fight that he died shortly after. And now for the grand finale. We leave the temple and we are immediately surrounded by guards. The captain accused Kiara of killing the stranger, even though none of the guards had seen the fight, and the man's blood was still dripping off of Aignir's hammer. Aignir tried to explain to the captain that he had killed the man, and only after the man had attacked the group and summoned a dangerous beast. But after the adventure was an absolute open-world free-roam sandbox with no goal or direction in the last 5.5 hours, we were now stuck firmly on railroads. The captain did not want to hear Aignir's word and was fixated on Kiara. For her crime, he would imprison her, and after a trial she would surely be executed. He strode towards her, handcuff in hand, and Kiara's players said, "Oh no, I'd turn around and run away." But the DM said, "No you don't." We were all a little confused, but Kiara's players said again, "I can't handle him, I'm turning around and running." And then the world's best DM pulled his ace out of the sleeve. "No, you don't run away. What you do instead is this." All of a sudden, fear gives way to burning rage in your veins. Your whole body tenses up, and it feels like liquid fire is flowing through your body. Just as the captain is about to handcuff you, you take a long swing and kick him in the groin with tremendous force. The captain is thrown several meters and lands on the dusty ground, panting. You walk up to him and crush his skull with a superhuman blow. Then you sink to the ground and lose consciousness. This is actually the worst of both worlds, hear me out. The sandbox is fun because of the endless possibility, but if it's not properly managed, then the problem is you don't always know what to do. The railroad shortcuts into fun because the path forward is clearly laid out, but also if it isn't managed well, the problem could be that you don't ever feel in control. The DM literally takes all of the bad and none of the good. He flicks the switch from freeform wandering nothingness to unavoidable train track railroads, no control, no choices. This is bad no matter what. But rubbing salt in the wound is that the DM doesn't even attempt to do it in a logical way. The guards show up and immediately accuse Kiara of murder. Not the dwarf with the blood-dripping hammer, doesn't question the giant monster corpse in the temple that was summoned out of thin air. Nothing. It's so obviously shoehorned to force his girlfriend into the center. It's clumsy, it's jank, it's broken. The only redeeming quality... One sec. Catch my breath. The only redeeming quality is that the DM doesn't pretend this is collaborative storytelling anymore. He's not even trying. It's really annoying to me personally when I'm reading a story and the DM tries to put on a show, like your choices matter, but they don't really. They all lead to the same conclusion. This DM, simply running unskippable cutscenes, telling you what you do. You're going to experience it whether you like it or not. It is funny though, because the DM in these stories is usually biased towards the girlfriend and makes the girlfriend's experience better at the expense of everybody else. But she actually gets the worst of it because the DM has a bead on her. He's like laser sighting her specifically. And he's completely incompetent. Be honest with me. Does this count as special girlfriend privileges or like specific girlfriend punishment? She gets more spotlight, but also a way more strict railroad. I think this is way worse than getting privileges because everybody else could just like tune out and play a monkey slamming brass cymbals in their head and nothing would change. But the girlfriend is so looped into the game that she has to play along, has to give feedback, has to buy in because the DM keeps laser focusing her. That's really the worst position to be in. The session ended, but at this very moment, of course, I realized why my colleague's boyfriend is the best DM in the world, while all the other players are just extras in the village scenery with nothing better to do than sit in jail or get drunk on honeybeer. Girlfriend is haunted by mysterious dreams and ultimately falls into a berserker frenzy, in which she effortlessly kills an adversary who is several levels stronger than she is. I think it's unnecessary to say that this was not only the first, but also the last session in which Ignir took part in village life as an extra. There was no way I was going to waste my Saturday evenings running after the girlfriend of the DM and gazing at her in wonder of her exploits. I asked the DM what I could have done to make the adventure get off the ground faster. He replied that the game is now over and it wouldn't make a difference anyway. I have no problem with a DM not showing their hand, even after the game has already ended, but why on earth did he feel the need to tell me that Ignir would have ended up in the toilet if I had rolled worse? A few weeks after our game, I asked Kiara's player how the campaign continued, and she reported that she had become the vessel of a god who uses her to exert his overpowering powers. She had already died twice, but the god had brought her back to life each time because he was not yet finished with her. Jailbird is a level 4 cleric. And what about Ignir? Well, killing a foul beast with a hammer is certainly a good deed, and he yelled the name of Hark while delivering the killing blow. So for him, this adventure was a total win. I have never played with him again, but I keep him in good memory. Okay, I have to disagree with OP on only one point. Still, excellent story, excellent attitude, love this guy. There's only one micro disagreement, and that is that he thinks the girlfriend is excited and loves playing with this DM because the girlfriend gets to do all this really cool stuff and is super invested. But I don't think that's the case. I think the girlfriend thinks this DM's the best because she's never played with anybody else. An experienced D&D player would not want to play with the DM who randomly takes control of their character and revives them twice so that they can be a puppet of his NPC. This DM is not playing with his friends, he's playing with himself and forcing his friends to watch. Oh, that sounded really bad. What I meant was, the big thing that separates D&D from other modes of storytelling or gaming is that it's multiple people all coming together to tell one story. A whole lot of these D&D stories come from one person taking on way too much of it for themselves and leaving little for everybody else. And the thing is, that's not even a fun way to play. Anyways, that's all the time I got today. Till next time.